All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 189 today. We're going to be discussing Mysteries and Metaphysics Part 3. Part 1, we discussed ancient civilizations and mysteries. Part 2, we discussed... what did we discuss in Part 2? I forget. Consciousness and, creators and gods and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And some esoteric and,
We went on a couple of different tangents on that one.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. So that's what we hit on so far. But I think this one we're just going to be discussing metaphysics, and I think that's kind of at the forefront of most of the things that we talk about. So I think this will be a good episode. And then for part 4, I'm thinking megalithic sites, and it'll be a slideshow episode. So if you're listening on an audio platform, check out part 4. It'll probably be obviously most beneficial to watch it on our YouTube channel. And before we get started here, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/mindescapepodcast. For just $2 a month, you'll get exclusive guest episodes and segments. We also are on Discord, so if you have Discord, check us out on there. And actually tomorrow, I haven't even told Maurice, but we're going to do a fan chat at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So anybody who's on our, Patreon or Discord, definitely jump in and have a chat with us. So, and one more thing, head on over to indrasweb.org. It is live. Sign up for an account today. This is the social media platform we created to connect open minds. Whether it's discussing metaphysics, philosophy, ancient civilizations, megalithic sites, if you have a theory or a hypothesis or anything like that, that's the place to do it. So head on over there. Okay. So how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, my man?
I'm all right. So metaphysics. I mean, we've discussed metaphysics in regards to like psychedelic experiences and the nature of reality, and we've done a few episodes on the topic specifically, so I thought this would be a good one too to discuss where we currently stand and how we think about things. Before we started the podcast, actually, did you even know what metaphysics were or think about it in that regard?
Metaphysical Jones, baby.
Do you even still know what metaphysics is?
Why don't you dive into it for me?
Metaphysics is just, so it comes from two Greek words that together they mean after or among the natural. So, basically somebody put together some of Aristotle's works, I think after he passed away, and there's a treatise called Metaphysics or Metaphysica, and it means like after the physics. So like what do we know beyond actual physics? Like what can we know beyond like science? Like what's the next level? What's the next step? What's the nature of reality? What is consciousness? What is the meaning of life if there is one? Is there any purpose in the universe? Like those kinds of questions. So
right. I'm looking up the definition. It says the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, substance,
right,
cause, identity, time, space. Yeah, obviously I've been pondering these things since high school after we've read some of the books, Siddhartha, Electric Kool-Aid, those kind of things, because those were heavily rooted in metaphysics, if you will. And then I also think because we were kind of attached to the improvisational bands, the live bands, the bands that were mainly based with their live performances and stuff. When you go to a show, you feel something that is more than words can explain. Mm-hmm. So just having that feeling, I know I saw Fish when I was a freshman, and I felt something there which propelled me to actually become a musician in the first place. So something there changed my life. What it was, I couldn't put my finger on it. Later that I started learning about collective consciousness and all those kind of things. So yeah, I more or less knew about it, but I didn't really understand it or have words to define it with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, what it comes down to is you knew about all these things, but you didn't actually know like the names or specific terminology or like how to break it down, basically.
Pretty much. And I was aware of them. I don't know if I knew about them because I'm still learning about them as we go now.
Right. I mean, I'm still learning. I mean, look, we don't have all the answers, that's for sure. I mean, I do a lot of research and reading, and my free time, I enjoy this stuff. I'm kind of a nerd like that, but I, by all means, am not some sort of scholar in this regard.
And do you think like the more information you get, the further you get from your answers, or what's your concept?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily think about it like that. I think, yeah, if you learn something new, it kind of could change your perception of things. It could either make you have more questions, which, yeah, more knowledge generally does lead to more questions sometimes. But those questions might help you break things down or specify how you feel or think about something as opposed to necessarily getting away from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so the main ones we normally talk about, ontology, which is a branch of philosophy that studies the concepts such as existence, being, becoming, and reality. You know, so like what's the nature of being? What's the nature of reality? And if you hear somebody talking about ontology, that's what they're discussing.
Okay.
Epistemology is the theory of knowledge, especially in regards to, in terms of like, it's the investigation of what distinguishes, what's justified belief versus what's opinion. Like, is there substance behind what you believe, or is it just a faith belief or something like that?
Uh-huh.
So epistemology is like, how do we know what we know? Teleology is the explanation of phenomena in terms of purpose. We talk about that a lot on the show. Is there an objective purpose, or is everything just subjective purpose, or is purpose something that we create ourselves? That's generally the way when I think about teleology, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, that's a real noodle scratcher.
I mean, what do you think? Do you think, before we started the podcast, did you think there was a purpose, and do you think that there's a purpose now?
Yeah, I think I thought there was a purpose because I was kind of more religious based, and I definitely think that there's a purpose now because the more we get into the science and the know-how and this and that, it still leads me to believe that this wasn't some kind of happy accident. But again, that's just me. I'm not gonna poo-poo anybody's ideas if they want to go one way or the other. But I'm set up in the camp of we're here for a reason. I think it's to learn lessons and improve ourselves. And some people would go even as far as to say that these may be multiple lives that we're living, and if we don't learn the lessons, then we have to come back and learn them again.
Yeah, I mean, that's what some people would point to, like deja vu or something like that, but I don't know how much I think that's even. I mean, I've definitely thought about it. I just don't. What would be the reasoning behind that?
Well, if there's a galactic school, and you have to keep raising your vibration.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, where would you even get this idea of, like, so we're talking about these things like epistemology. Like, how would you know that? Like, how do you know? Is it just a faith thing? Like, how would you think that there's a galactic school?
Well, we don't have to say it like that, but I think that I think that it would be the way that we came to be. I think that it's pretty hard to explain that just by saying that all the right things came together at once. And even if you use science to look at it, you'd be like, yeah, well, it's possible. Obviously, anything is possible, but the likelihood of it all coming together, I don't know. It doesn't feel right to me. Now, does that mean that it's my brain telling me that there's a reason to live, or what?
You should. I mean, look, you should question stuff. That doesn't mean you can still. I think that there's like a value to believing in something. It's almost like a placebo effect. Like if you believe strongly enough in something, like, and I'm not saying being like crazy, and like telling people, other people, what to believe or think. Nothing like that. But in your personal life, if you want to believe something that's kind of out there and it helps you in some way, I mean, I'm all for that, as long as it's not in, affecting somebody else in some negative way, if that makes sense. But I was just curious, like why you think that. I mean, it's fine to think things and believe things. But how do you know that is, would be my, and if it's a gut feeling or, there's a lot of people talking about gut feelings out there too. Like, most of your serotonin is in your gut. Your brain is very connected to your gut. So there's something going, I'm not saying believe your gut all the time, but I mean, I don't know about you, but in school when I would take a test and I'd have a gut feeling to like mark something off, and then I'd go against that, later on I'd realize, oh, it was the gut feeling I should have gone with. I would have gotten that right, Yeah,
I get that a lot when I'm playing cards or something, like you'll have a instinct feeling and then you kind of fight it. Like your brain will try and convince you to do something else when you should have just listened to your stomach. But you were saying that the bottom line is you have to believe in some kind of outlandish thing, even if you are a scientist. If you're heavily rooted in, the Big Bang, which I'm not saying did or did not, but if you believe that all time and space was in the size of a pinhead, isn't that kind of outlandish?
Yeah, I mean, what's that?
Like, where did that come from? That's the thing. That's what we kind of always get back to.
Well, that's not a set in stone thing either. That's an illusion that it's set in stone. Like, not all. I mean, I look. They can trace things back pretty well. I mean, do they have all the answers? Right. No, because there's still other theories out there of like a multiverse and these bubbles, which were universes colliding into each other and creating our universe. So there's all these different theories and hypotheticals and speculation. So in no way is it set in stone. And I'm sure as we know more or go through, time with science and maybe what even like the next version of whatever science becomes, which might even be a thing too, that people don't even think about. Like, you think science, like, oh, this is this empirical observation thing. But people used to think that way about religion until philosophy came around, and then philosophy turns into science, and now we're at science. So maybe there's some next step there that we're just not aware of. So
yeah, and again, I was just kind of supporting the fact that you're gonna believe, if you're the science master, you're still gonna be believing in some kind of out there things, because there hasn't been anything truly proven. We don't really understand why we dream. I was talking to my counselor or my therapist today about full moons, and I was like, I asked him what his thoughts were on full moons and do they affect emotions and things like that. He's like, well, my mom said that she used to work for a doctor's office, and she always said that when the full moons came, people came out of the woodworks and all kinds of crazy stuff happened. Do they have? And my therapist said the same thing. He's like, we don't have any scientific proof, but being a mental health professional, I've seen things, and their emotions do seem to be somehow connected to the full moon. Now, is that a placebo because we're aware that it's full, or is there something more there that we just don't understand? And that's kind of the thing. It's like we don't fully understand a lot of things. So,
I mean, that would come down to like how space, or like the harmony of spheres in the ancient world, they would call it, how that affects one's psyche. Again, I mean, I think, look, sun cycles, moon cycles, they for sure have an effect. To what extent that effect is, who knows?
Well, that's why I kind of argue with the scientist stuff, because they're like, oh, well, we're just animals. And then you're like, okay, well, let's say we're animals. The moon, the full moon and the moon's cycles and all that stuff affect the animals. So why couldn't it, if we're animals, then it would affect us too? And then they're like, well, we're humans. So like they fight each other. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know where you're going with that, but so let's get to identity. Identity is a fundamental metaphysical concern. Like, this is at the forefront of metaphysics, and metaphysicians investigating identity are tasked with the question of like what exactly it means for something to be identical to itself, or something along those lines. So like an example, we've talked about some of these ancient Greeks, like Parmenides, denied change altogether. Like he thought everything was this one thing that just never changed. So if that, does that make sense? Like,
say it again.
Parmenides, who we've discussed on our pre-Socratic episode, our part of our Ancient Greece series, denied that there was any sort of change. Like people don't change. Like nothing changes. It just is what it is. So, and then you have Heraclitus, another pre-Socratic, who argued that change was, evident and ubiquitous. And, he had the famous saying, which people use all the time, no man ever steps in the same river twice, meaning that the river's always changing, the current, the flow. Yeah. The water that's there 1 second, you step in and again, it's new water.
Absolutely.
So you have two competing, differences right there. A modern, somebody that we've also discussed in regards to this kind of a thing was Leibniz. People pronounce it differently, Leibniz, and his law of indiscernibility of identicals, meaning that for two things to be exactly the same, they have to be exactly, like they have to be for two things to be identical, they have to be exactly the same. Like all the properties have to be the same. So like if you take mind and matter, okay, so we know what matter is. We can touch it. We can interact with it, whatever. Mind is a different thing. Mind is something different. So if it's emergent from biology or whatever, it's still like, that's where this whole thing flips. It's like modern philosophers would say, oh, well, that's just a difference in like language, like we figured that out, or just the wording of it or something like that. But if you look at like what mind is versus matter, they are two different things. Like you can't touch a thought, you can't. So mind and matter are technically not the same thing. However, consciousness might be this thing that comes from biology. So it's like this thing that we've learned over time, but that would be used as like an argument or for debate, for dualism in a way. You could use that mind and matter are two different things. However, modern philosophers do not believe that. And you could look at it like this, how think of matter as your hand, okay? And then if you make a fist is something different, but it's still your hand. So that's that might be what the mind is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of where, that's going with that whole thing.
I mean, I think that the truth probably lies in between both of those, don't you?
No. We'll get to what I think later on here.
Okay.
In philosophy, idealism is a diverse group of metaphysical views which all assert that reality is in some way indistinguishable or inseparable from human perception or understanding. So mind is key when you're talking about, when you hear like an idealist or idealism, mind is what comes first there. Let's see here. So then you have things like, okay, so subjective idealism is it's basically that objects only exist to the extent that they are perceived by someone. So you need the human in subjective idealism for that to occur. So you need the observer. Like that's what's going on there. And then you have objective idealism, which says that the existence of objective consciousness exists before and after, it's not dependent on the human consciousness. So there's two different versions of ideal. Yeah, we're going to get into a lot more here. So you better start paying attention. Let's see here. So this is a big one. We did one episode on this a while back. I don't think we really did it justice. Maybe we'll do another one on the future and have a guest and really go deep with it. But determinism versus free will. So determinism, for people that don't know what that is, it's that all your actions, it's like a causal line of events that led to this present moment. So your life can be determined based on everything that's previously happened before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like you technically you weren't making those, you thought you were making those decisions, but you weren't really making those decisions. They were already going to happen.
Yeah, because I did this, that happened, then that happened. Yeah.
Okay, and then there's also free will, which is the belief that everything you do is based on your own free
Volition.
will. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally in that camp.
I'm surprised you said that word. I didn't know that was in your vocabulary.
Wow, it's just beat up on Maurice Day.
No, I was impressed. That was a good thing.
April Fools.
He didn't know what it meant. He's heard it a million times, folks. No, that was good. But so you have those two things. I mean, how do you think about? Did you think about that before this podcast? And if so, what did you think? And then how do you think about it now?
I thought about it right around the time we started it because Joe Rogan had some guest on and they was talking about that.
It was probably Sam Harris, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I'm totally in the camp of free will. I think that you have total control over the choices you make, and yes, the previous events may have. I don't know, man. Because when you start boiling it down, it gets very, very in depth. You know what I mean? Like, if you're making decisions, are you really making them, or are you making them because of previous things that have influenced you to make that decision? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. It's pretty heavy stuff.
So did you think about it beforehand, and like, what do you think about it now?
I still believe that we have free will. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you my idea of this, or how I think about this, how I thought about this going into this podcast. Yeah, I 100% thought we had free will, and I didn't even know kind of what determinism was. So that was like what, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, after knowing what determinism is and understanding these concepts and like how to break these, metaphysical ideas and the different philosophies behind these things, I personally think that we have both. I think that to us, the observer or the person interfacing with the world through our consciousness, we have free will. Outside of our consciousness, if there is some other entity outside of us, whether it was, let's say it was a creator or something way more advanced, and they had all the physics, they had all the quantum physics, they had the unified theory that we don't have now between the different, branches of physics, and they had all those things together, they could figure it all out, they would be able to tell you what you were going to do. If they had all the calculations, so we talk about this a lot.
Yeah, the billiard shot.
Yeah, Simone Laplace's billiard shot. So Simone Laplace, back in the day, I think he's like a 1700s Frenchman, said that if you could, let's say you have a billiards table set up for the break, and you were given all of the geometry, all of the physics, you had all the math, everything, you could pretty much determine where all the balls were going to land on the break.
Right.
So now look at our universe, and that's like a God's pool shot in a way, if you think about it like that. So if somebody said God is all-knowing or whatever, if there was a creator, they would know that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I believe, again, subjectively we have free will. Objectively, it's probably deterministic. Right now, that's what I believe. Now, my mind could change, but it's changed a lot. That's why partly in the title I put on these where we stand, because this is...
Yeah, it's going to change tomorrow.
It's going to change. But this is just based on my experience and researching and thinking and pondering these things a lot. So,
well, I've also came up with a pretty good rule of thumb: is the truth lies somewhere between. Which is not it's not a cop out.
I know, but you do say it for like a lot of things.
Yeah, I know, because it's usually.
You even want me to say it because you're like, you think the truth lies in between. I'm like, I not on that.
Well, yeah, you kind of just did apply it, my friend.
That's not in the middle.
Well,
that's applying two very different specific points.
Yeah, but that I'm not saying that necessarily. It's lands in the middle. But
did what I say sounded that? Did that sound that crazy or that unbelievable?
No, I like what you were saying, man. But the point that I make with the truth lies in between the middle is, like, if me and you got into an argument and then we went and both you told your wife, I told my girlfriend, and we talked about like the argument, we would both have a separate view of what happened. What actually happened maybe I had 75% of it and you had 35%, or maybe we both had 50-50, or maybe you had 90% of it right and I had 10%. You know what I'm saying? But the truth is somewhere in between. That's kind of where I go.
Yeah,
with
I mean,
that.
again, I've said it too. I agree with that to a certain extent, depending on what it is. I don't think that applies to everything, though.
Yeah. Well,
but you will shove it in there and apply it.
no, I don't think it applies to everything. Obviously, water is H2O.
All right, Thales, we'll get to you later.
All right.
So one big thing that when we're talking about these two, again, I mentioned Leibniz and the whole, for two things to be the same or identical, all parts of it have to be the same. So when you look at like dualism versus monism, you have Cartesian duality, okay, which is that the mind and matter are two different things, which is outdated in terms of, like I said, modern philosophers and scientists. They don't think that at all. There might be some. I mean, I'd like to hear actually like a modern viewpoint of that if somebody knows somebody or has an idea for that. But yeah, then monism, which we discovered, is you have, let's see here. You have physicalism. You have idealism, and you have neutral monism. So, I mean, we'll get into those here in a minute, but it's broken down as like, if you think dualism is this, again, separation of mind and matter. Monism is the belief that there's one thing at the core of all things. So if you think it's physicalism, it's going to be matter is greater than mind, which means that matter leads to mind. If you believe in idealism, well, mind is more important than matter, and mind leads to matter. If you believe in neutral, it's kind of a 50-50 thing. You could go either way on it.
Uh-huh.
So, again, monism, the attributes or, oneness or singleness. Let's see here. So there's different types of monism too, which we're going to get into here. Even, let's see here. I was going to mention too, when you think about these things, there is no like right or wrong way. Like I said, even though most philosophers don't really entertain dualism anymore, I think that there's still some sort of like mental exercises or, like thinking things you can like thought experiments that you can do that are interesting. Like you can still toss these ideas around in different ways. I think that might lead to something else. So
Absolutely.
And knowing about it's a good thing as well. I don't think knowing about something that's kind of outdated is necessarily a bad thing if it in regards to like the nature of reality.
No, I agree with you.
And so like for monism, you had Neoplatonism, which came from originally Plato's philosophies, and everything is derived from the one. And in this view, only, one thing is ontologically basic or prior to everything else. So let me go back here a little bit. You have priority monism, which states that all things existing, things go back to a source that is distinct from them. And that, again, that's, Neoplatonism. So like the God or the one thing is distinctly separate. Like it can't, we're not a part of the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Existence monism posits that, strictly speaking, there is only a single thing in the universe which can be artificially or arbitrarily divided into many things. Substance monism asserts that there's a variety of existing things that can be explained in terms of a single reality or substance. Substance monism posits that only one kind of stuff exists, although many, many things are made up of this stuff, mind or matter. Dual aspect monism is the view that the mental and the physical are two aspects or perspectives of the same substance. Let's see here. Okay. So, um, again, monism is derived from Western philosophy. It usually uh, is discussed when people discuss the mind and body problem. Um, the wide definition of it is a philosophy is monistic if it postulates the unity of the origin of all things. All existing things return to a source that is distinct from them. The restricted definition. So this requires not only the unity of the origin, but also the unity of substance and essence. So Aristotle would talk about essence, and I think actually Plato talked about it a bit too. So let's say I have a ball. I have a tennis ball. I have a golf ball. I have a basketball. You would say that that's the essence, right? Like if I handed you one of those balls, you would know that this is like that's what that thing is. It's a ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could say the same thing about, I'm trying to think, a guitar. If something had 6 strings and looked like a guitar, it might have come in lots of different shapes and colors and sizes and whatever, all weird, a Strat, a Les Paul, a PRS, whatever it is, but it's still a guitar, right?
Right.
That's the essence. So we know that there's this thing called essence because there's like I don't even know how to, it has this thing that you just know, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And so one thing that I know you will like here is that in modern Hinduism, the term, absolute monism is used for Vedanta. So like in that mind, philosophy or, religion, the idea that all things are one, right? I mean, you've read those books, you've talked to Chris, that all these things are just one thing. And like, even Chris said that like all these different terms, even within Vedanta, they're just made up to help people understand. But in reality, it's all just one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where, again, a lot of religions kind of have that thought on that. So, but there's different forms of it, and we're going to get into all these. Again, there's so many variables for each of these things. There's different types of monism, different types of idealism, different types of realism. There's so many different little like variations where they're like offshoots of these main topics.
Yeah.
So we discussed I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Is this going over your head so far, or what do you think?
No, I think that we are all one, and we are all connected, and I think that we've came from a source that we shall return to.
Okay.
Pretty basic compared to the offshoots and all the stuff. But when like the stuff that Chris was kind of talking about with the Vedanta, like, yeah, it can be, a lot of the stuff can get really super crazy, and like you were saying, there's all kinds of different variations and stuff, but at the core of it all, I think that's kind of more of the important part, is just understanding the core of it.
Yeah.
But that's more for personal use, not studying and trying to learn all the different sects of the religions and things like that. Obviously you can, if you're trying to study this stuff, you can get into all that stuff, all those different avenues, and which is a good thing as well.
Right. So here's different types of monism. I don't know if I listed them all before, but substance monism, the view that the apparent plurality of substance is due to different states of or appearance of a single substance. Attributive monism, the view that whatever the number of substances, they are of a single ultimate kind. Partial monism is within a given realm of being, however many there happen to be, there is only one substance. Existence monism is the view that there is only one concrete objective one. Priority monism is the whole is a prior to its parts. The world has parts, but the parts are dependent fragments of the integrated whole. And then property monism, the view that all properties are of a single type, only physical properties exist, and genus monism, which is the doctrine that there is a highest category of being. Let's see here. So here's some views that contrast monism. Metaphysical dualism, which asserts that there are two ultimately irreconcilable substances or realities, such as good and evil. For example, let's see here. Well, I don't like that example. We'll move on. Metaphysical pluralism, which asserts that there are three or more fundamental substances or realities. Metaphysical nihilism, which negates any of the above categories: substance, properties, concrete objects, etc. Monism is modern, or philosophy of mind can be divided into three broad categories. So this is what I was talking about earlier. So you have an idealist, which is a mentalistic monism, which holds that only mind or spirit exists. Neutral monism, which holds that the one sort of thing fundamentally exists to which both the mental and the physical world can be reduced. So that might be kind of where I might be neutral monism, which, well, maybe not. Maybe I'm idealist. I don't know. I got to think about this more. I think mind. I think
yourself into one of those categories.
Well, I think mind. Well, there's so much more, and you can check off quite a few boxes here too. It doesn't have to just be one thing, because there's different versions that fulfill different thoughts and philosophies. But I do think mind is super important. I just don't know if it's equal to matter, or if mind is more important than matter. I don't know. Or more, I should say, important to the nature of reality.
I think the mind's more important than matter, because if we didn't have the mind, then we wouldn't even be having this discussion about it in the first place.
I agree with you, but I'm talking about in terms of
of the creation of
things. Relevance to the universe.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know.
But if you didn't have the mind, you wouldn't be able to take anything in.
Right. Well,
this stuff is very in depth. I'll tell you that. Like my brain is. I mean, I'm pondering on this stuff as we talk about.
No, I think we got to go through this though, because if you can make this stuff normal to think about, you can take it to the next level when you're thinking. So
yeah.
Material monism, also called physicalism or materialism. I know we talk about this a lot. Where I am anti this. I do know that I'm anti materialism. Not that I don't think it's a possibility that everything's just matter and nothing, like even consciousness is like a byproduct of matter. I accept it as an option, but I don't want to live my life that way, even if it were true. So
that's the path that I take. Let's say that you're believing some things and it's not true in the end. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Right.
So, you're right back to where you were started anyway.
But if I'm being honest, I don't think that that's the answer based on everything I know so far and what I think is truth. Even though I would accept that, I guess, as a truth, I don't think that is the truth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we've had this talk multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, so...
We poo-pooed people over it.
So, yeah, materialism, it holds the idea that the material world is primary and that consciousness arises through the interactions of the material world. Eliminative materialism is everything is physical and mental things do not exist. So I don't know how that's even a thing, but so mental things don't exist? We don't have a mind? I mean, who believes that?
Well, you have to have the mind to believe it in the first place.
You have to have a mind to even create that term in the first place. So
yeah. So let me smack this guy in the head, whoever invented it.
Reductive physicalism. So according to which mental things do exist and are kind of a physical thing. So, according to which mental things do exist and are a kind of physical thing, certain positions do not fit easily into the above categories. So things as functionalism, anomalous monism, and reflexive monism. Well, let's see here. Okay, so we've discussed this on our Ancient Greece series, like the pre-Socratics, and I actually went through and I did talk about this, how they, some of them came up with these monistic ideas way beyond, like they were probably the first people to think these things. But Thales, who's known as the first philosopher, was a pre-Socratic. He thought water made up everything. He thought water was like the root of all matter or existence.
Right. And then someone thought the sun,
which is wrong, but it's a good idea in the sense you need water to live. He probably, growing up in Greece or in Miletus, on the edge of Turkey there, probably thought that seeing all that water, that's probably not a bad way to go. I mean, not having the aerial views or the space shots to know how much land is truly out there. So, and it was new. He was the first natural philosopher that we know of. So,
and that inner thing it draws us to the water always.
And then you have Anaximander, who thought that the Aperon, which was this unidentified infinite, it's I don't even know. Reality is like one thing, but we can't know what, kind of a thing. So he thought that was the case for it. Anaximenes, I can't even pronounce that, of Miletus.
Well, don't look at me.
No, I wasn't looking to you. Thought air was at the core of everything. Heraclitus, again, I mentioned him earlier. He thought change, was at the core of everything, but it was symbolized by fire, and that everything was in constant flux. Parmenides thought everything was one thing, but nothing. It's like an unmoving, perfect sphere, unchanging, undivided kind of a thing. So, and he was big on perception and, how our senses lie to us and that kind of a thing too. So, which is true I think to a certain extent. You go on some of these rides at like Disney World or something, and what's it called? Soarin'. This ride Soarin', and it feels like you're flying, and they're blasting like lavender as you're going through lavender fields. You smell lavender. I mean, you feel
tricking your senses.
Yeah, they're tricking your senses. So it's absolutely possible. I mean, anybody that plays video games, same thing happens. You go to the movies or, whatever. There's lots of things that can do that. Let's see here. So let's say after Socrates, Neo-Pythagoreans, such as Apollonius, centered their cosmologies around the monad or the one. Stoics, they basically taught that there is only one substance and it's identified as God. Let's see here. Neoplatonism is monistic. Plotinus taught that there was an ineffable, transcendent God, the one. It always goes back to this monad or the one, of which subsequent realities are emanations. So, again, Plato leads to Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism leads to Gnosticism and early Christianity. And that's where you get a lot of those ideas of this one. And actually, Gnosticism, the whole origin behind the demiurge is that the demiurge emanates without its counterpart, Sophia, which would be the female aspect. And that's why we have this God, Yaldabaoth, also known as Yahweh, who's this, he thinks he's the one true God, but he's really like an imperfect creation who creates us, this other imperfect creation, thinking that we're this perfect thing, but we're actually this like flawed version of this one thing. And actually that goes back to all the way to Plato's theory of forms, which Plato thought that there was this other realm where everything, the idea and the idea of things and the geometry and the shapes of everything existed in another realm, and that's where we come from. So that's where that idea comes from.
Yeah, I like that. I think we've talked about that a long time ago.
Yeah. Probably on our ancient Greece. Let's see here. Some famous monists. Giordano Bruno, who said that the universe was infinite and that there's probably, life elsewhere, was burned at the stake by the Catholic Church. Spinoza, who I know Peter Scherstedt, who's been on that we talked about psychedelics and philosophy of the mind. He's a big Spinozan. Leibniz, who I just mentioned up there. Let's see here. Hegel, Schopenhauer, Alan Watts, Bertrand Russell, Alfred North Whitehead. I mean, these are some big thinkers. And then neuroscientist Francis Crick, who came up with the idea of the double helix for the DNA strand.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Your favorite analogy of the plane, being constructed in a junkyard or a tornado ripping through a junkyard, constructing a plane.
Yeah. Chew on that.
Okay. Now we're going to get to some of these different variations of things, and I'm just going to read these definitions because some of these things we discussed, and some people, I've gotten emails like, what does this mean? Kind of a thing. So, I mean, I don't get them all the time, but I'm just going to go through some of these terms. If you hear something you like, let me know. Okay, absurdism. It's the philosophy stating that the efforts of man to find meaning in the universe will ultimately fail because no such meaning exists, at least in relation to man. Absurdism is related to existentialism, although it should not be confused with nihilism. I know you probably don't like that one.
No. Dude, the word nihilism, it just sounds bad.
All right, Big Lebowski. Let's see. Acosmism, I guess that's how you pronounce that, is a philosophy that denies the reality of the universe, seeing it ultimately as illusory, and only the infinite, unmanifest absolute is real. In contrast to pantheism, acosmism begins with the recognition that there is only one reality, which is infinite, non-dual, blissful, etc. Agnosticism, most people know what this is. Some people might not. It's the philosophical view that the truth values of certain claims, so particularly theological claims, the existence of gods, deities, are unknown, inherently unknowable or incoherent, and therefore irrelevant. So people that are agnostic are people that are saying, we either can't know that there's a God or, not a God, but to me it doesn't even matter anyways. So, and that person still might be open to the idea of that, but they've never been presented with anything that has persuaded them, if that makes sense.
It does.
Let's see here. Altruism, the belief that people have a moral obligation to serve others or the greater good. It is generally opposed to the concepts of self-interest and egoism. So I think we all want to be altruistic as much as possible. I mean, I don't know. You have to be somewhat self-serving in some regards, or how would you survive? But, I mean, I think that the world's a better place if people feel like there is some sort of moral or ethical obligation to help other people out.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Animism, and this is the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. I think
I like that.
Aristotle was a fan of that. Anthropocentrism. So this is the practice that, conscious or otherwise, of regarding the existence and or concerns of human beings as the central fact of the universe. So this would be the idea that we are the only thing that matter. Like we're at the center of this thing. Like everything revolves around us.
Right. Wait, then that's like the setup of a meme that just doesn't go over very well.
Yeah.
But I think we all kind of deep down do believe that, do we not?
I think that it's like a default. I think that when you go throughout your day, it's like the giant's marble. Going through your day, you think you are the center of, your own world or universe, which you are. I mean,
Yeah, I was
technically.
gonna say, yeah.
And then from there, you think, oh, this is the only thing that exists right now that we know of. And then from there, you can keep going on and on and on. And then you get to aliens and gods and all sorts of things. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably some sort of a default thing. I mean, and actually in ancient times, obviously that was kind of the thought process to a certain extent.
Well, they could only see what they could see with
Well,
their
it's
eyes.
probably, I mean, that probably comes in handy for survival too. If you think that you are at the center of the universe or everything revolves around you, there could be some sort of benefit from, evolutionary.
Well, you should treat yourself as its own temple, obviously. You got to take care of yourself, and
Okay.
that should be the number one thing,
Yeah.
when you boil it down.
Next one is anthropomorphism. So this is the form of personification involving the attribution of human characteristics and qualities to non-human beings. So you see this with like animal-headed gods, and you're giving human, you're giving human characteristics to things that are not human, whether it be objects or nature or animals, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Anti-Realism. Any position involving either the denial or the objective reality of entities of a certain type, or the insistence that humans should be agnostic about their real existence. Thus, people may speak of anti-realism with respect to other minds, the past, and the future. So, Aristotelianism. So this is the philosophical tradition that is basically inspired from Aristotle's work at the Peripatetic school. Let's see here. It's amazing that our language is Greek-based and these things are impossible to say.
Yeah.
I mean, not everything. I think I've gotten better since we've done our like ancient Greece series at saying and pronouncing some of the, some of the etymology and stuff. But I mean, some of it's just like, what are we doing here?
Right. Well, you're talking to illiterate Jones over here, so I'm really having a hard time.
All right. Asceticism is a way of life characterized. A better way to say it. So it's like your existence refrains from worldly pleasures. Those who practice it often perceive their practices as virtuous and pursue them to achieve greater level of spirituality. So an example would be the Pythagoreans, the people that followed Pythagoras. It was kind of like a cult, like an ascetic cult. And, it was all about like mathematics and metaphysics, and you had to be a vegetarian. So it's this like, it's like a very, you're reframing, it's like a discipline in a way, I guess you could call it like that. Like you're being disciplined from engaging in things that would normally give you pleasure.
Yeah.
To ultimately seek some sort of higher level of consciousness. Atheism, I think most people know what this is. Some people won't. Anyways, and some people that call themselves atheists don't even actually know what it is. I see people debate online all the time, and they actually don't know what some of these terms are. I mean, I've been guilty of stuff like that in the past too, but some of it's really egregious.
Yeah.
The obscene of belief in the existence of God or gods, thus contrasting with theism, a condition of being without theistic beliefs. This definition includes both those who assert that there are no gods and those who maintain that no beliefs at all regarding the existence of gods. So nowadays, most people probably are atheists, or a lot of people are atheists. And, you even have this movement called the New Atheists, where you have like Sam Harris and, a Richard Dawkins type, or these different people that, they have these, you see them always debating people. Like on YouTube, there's a million videos of these new atheists debating people that believe in a God or, consciousness surviving death. That's like their main thing is they're trying to, change people's minds. I even think that some of them go to like have debates at like with priests and different religious leaders and things like that. So there's those new atheists, and they really get off on trying to like change people's minds about there being some sort of God or creator or consciousness surviving death.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
I mean, look, do what you want to do if that's
what I'm saying.
If that's your thing, but at the same time, it's like, what a waste. If you're smart enough to debate some of the top minds, you'd think that would be better off spent doing something else. Because even if let's say you change a few people's minds, I mean, okay, so what?
Yeah, I mean, is that bettering your life to bring other people down into black void?
Here's what I would say: the people that are willing to change are usually not the people that need to hear those things, anyways. Like those people might have come to that conclusion without you at some point. Like the people that are so dogmatic about these things, like let's say they believe the Bible word for word. I think the Bible is a great allegory. I think that there's some knowledge in there, but there's also some very questionable things too. So I think that, so if somebody's going to read a book written by a bunch of different people and they don't understand the history of it, where it came from, how it came to be, those kinds of things, I mean, that's where you get into this realm where it's like, those are the people that you want to change, help at least get them into the mode where they're like researching and looking into more things. But again, that's where I stand. I don't have a problem with them, but I don't understand them changing people's minds that are willing. Like those people are already willing to change their minds. So,
yeah.
Let's see here.
Yeah, everybody just wants you to be with them. They always want you to just follow what they're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody's
safety in numbers, if you will.
No, it's everybody's evangelical about something. Like growing up when we were in high school, we're like, let's get people into fish. We love fish,
Yeah.
And then, about 5-10 years ago, I started thinking, man, I shouldn't have told so many people about fish. I love fish, but there's too many people. There's too many. Well, yeah, there's too many idiots at these things now. I can't even enjoy it the same way, which but is what it is.
Neither here nor there.
Let's see here. Dualism. We already discussed this a little bit above, but it's the theory that the mind and matter are two different things, or mind and body are two different things. Let's see here. Emergent Materialism. So this is the philosophy that asserts that mind is irreducibly existent in some sense, albeit not in the sense that being that doesn't even make sense. I don't even know. So it's the study of mental phenomena is independent of other sciences. So again, I don't even know what I wrote down there, but I messed that up. So
all right, we forgive you.
Yeah, you're gonna get some of those,
Absolutely. We're only human, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's see here. Epiphenomenalism. Yeah, epiphenomenalism is the view that in philosophy of mind, according to which physical events have mental effects, but mental events have no effects of any kind. In other words, causal relations go only one way, from the physical to the mental. So, again, that this is saying that physical events lead to mental effects. So this is all based on, kind of materialistic in a way, or materialism in a way.
Uh-huh.
Like meaning that you can go back to monism, that chart that I was telling you about, the difference between dualism and monism, and physicalism, and the idea that matter is weighed heavier, or there's more weight into the physical world or matter than there is the mind. So, okay, let's see here. Okay, so existentialism. This is the philosophical movement that views the human existence as having a set of underlying themes and characteristics, such as anxiety, dread, freedom, awareness of death, the consciousness of existing, and that all these things are primary. That they cannot be reduced or explained by natural scientific approach or any approach that attempts to detach itself or rise above these themes. So you have a lot of, like Nietzsche or Nietzsche. I mean, we've had 3 or 4 different people on the podcast that all pronounce that differently. Even to this day, I see like scholars fighting about that. So
Yeah.
even these people's names we can't even agree on. So
What a world we live in.
But so I think most people know what existentialism is. Idealism. So back to this. This is the metaphysical view that associates reality to ideas in the mind rather than to the material objects. It lays emphasis on the mental or spiritual components of experience and renounces the notion of material existence. So again, idealism puts mind over matter. Illusionism. So this is a philosophy that holds that there is no material world, but rather a collection of illusions formed by human consciousness that results in an environment for all humans to live in. This is kind of interesting. Do you want me to repeat that? Or are you paying attention? Because it looks like you weren't.
I mean, I'm listening, but I always could use a refresh.
Okay, so illusionism is a philosophy that holds that there is no material world, but rather a collection of illusions formed by human consciousness that results in an environment for all humans to live in. So actually, this kind of sounds like, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this TED Talk with this neuroscientist, Anil Seth, and his theory is that all of us are all hallucinating all the time.
Uh-huh.
Like, well, that's all we're doing is hallucinating. So this would kind of be that, right? If everything's an illusion and we're living in this collection of illusions formed by human consciousness, and it revolves, like, so I forget the guy's name, but there's another guy out there saying that we can't even know what reality actually looks like, where this is just what we formed through evolution to this point. So it's
Well, that's
something
what I was going to ask you is what's the real world then?
Well, according to Anil Seth, we don't know because we're always hallucinating all the time. This is all This is all illusionary. Not to say that things aren't there, but our perception of what it is created through biology. So I don't know.
Wild.
I do find that kind of interesting, though.
Oh yeah, it's interesting, but it's hard to wrap my head around.
So then you have logical atomism. Bertrand Russell developed a logical atomism in an attempt to identify the atoms of thought, pieces of thought that cannot be divided into smaller pieces of thought. So I don't know if you remember a pre-Socratic episode with Democritus, this guy, him and I'm drawing a blank. I think Cratylus maybe came up with this idea. Was it Cratylus? I don't remember.
It's all right.
But this idea that there's these tiny particles. The story goes he's looking through like a light shaft and he saw like a bunch of dust and through the beam of light, and that everything is made up of these little particles. We still use that to this day. The idea of the atom came from ancient Greece and the pre-Socratics.
That's sweet.
So just to point out though, Democritus's idea of the atom is probably very different than our idea of the atom.
Well, we have a little more range with the telescope.
And there's subatomic particles, you have quantum
or
physics
the microscope,
now.
rather.
You have all this crazy stuff going on now too, but that is what we still kind of go by in that regard. And there might even be ultimately at some point some particle that we get to where it is not dividable, which he would then be right, but maybe it would would be a more elevated version of what Democritus was thinking. Let's see here. Materialism. So again, we've talked about this. Materialism in the form of philosophical monism. It holds that matter is the fundamental substance in nature and that all things, including mental states and consciousness, are results of material interactions. According to philosophical materialism, mind and consciousness are byproducts of epiphenomena of the material process such as biochemistry, the human brain, the nervous system, which they cannot exist. This concept, they cannot exist. With this concept, directly contrast idealism, where the mind and consciousness are first-order realities, This is the opposite. So we did discuss that a little bit earlier. Naive realism. So this is also called direct realism or common sense realism. And this is the common view of the world, including the claims that it is as it is perceived, that objects have the properties attributed to them, and that they maintain these properties even when not being perceived. So this is kind of interesting because what we know about quantum physics, and when you observe something, the measurement changes. So I don't know how that would play into there. Maybe that debunks that a little bit. I don't know. Let's see here. Nihilism, your favorite one.
Here we go.
He's a nihilist, man.
Where's Flea?
It is a philosophy or family of views within philosophy expressing some form of negation towards life or towards the fundamental concepts such as knowledge, existence, the meaning of life. Different nihilist positions hold variously different human value, or the different human values are baseless, and that life is meaningless, that knowledge is impossible, or that some set of entities do not exist. So again, it's a very bleak way to look at the universe and the world.
Yeah, it's a troublesome path to go down.
Again,
I would think.
It's your favorite one.
Yeah.
Ontologism is the ideological system that maintains that God and divine ideas are first object of humans' intelligence, and that the intuition of God is the first act of their intellectual knowledge. Well, let's see here. Martin Heidegger used the term ontotheology to refer to answering questions of being with direct reference to the belief in God. So this is saying that once we came up with the idea of God, this was like a first step towards intellectual knowledge. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Phenomenalism. So in epistemology and the philosophy of perception, the view that physical objects do not exist as things in themselves, but only as perceptual phenomena or sensory stimuli. Like things, it's like hardness, softness, sweetness. These things are situated in time and space. Platonic realism is a belief in the existence of the universals as articulated by Plato. Platonic realism is often created by Plato's theory of forms. Again, we've discussed that many times. We did an episode on Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. We went kind of into depth with that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Platonism, the school of philosophy founded by Plato, often referred to as Platonic idealism. This belief, it's the belief that the entities of the phenomenal world are imperfect reflections of the ideal truth, as I mentioned before. In metaphysics, sometimes used to mean the claim that universals exist independent of particulars. This is like the predecessor, like precursor to Aristotelianism. Pythagoreanism is a set of esoteric and metaphysical beliefs held by the ancient Greek philosopher Pythagoras and his followers, who were considerably influenced by math. Pythagoreans greatly influenced Platonism. Later rivals of Pythagorean doctrines led to what is now called Neo-Pythagoreanism, or revivals. I said rivals. I'm sorry. My mind's all blurry right now.
Yeah.
I can't read for some reason tonight at all. I apologize. Let's see here. So Pythagoras, again, I mentioned his ascetic cult that he had, but when you look at what Pythagoras, Socrates, and Plato did, when they would be in a dialogue with an interlocutor, I can't even pronounce anything tonight. I don't know what's going on with me. I can't even talk, but And I didn't even hit the vape pen or anything. I don't even know what's
You
going
might
on.
need to hit the vape pen.
Maybe
to
I
keep
do.
Your thoughts cleared.
Maybe I do. But so yeah, so those three, so you have Pythagoras, Socrates, and Plato, and they would try and win the argument or the debate or kind of reveal knowledge they would always go to math. Like that was their go-to. Using math, they would be able to basically win the argument because a lot of people couldn't really fall back on that back then. And then you also have, so somebody that kind of diverged would be Aristotle. So where those three used math to, drive home their point, Aristotle actually diverged and he would use biology. So since he was very interested in observing nature and like animals and like the functions and mechanisms behind things, he kind of had a different take on it. So,
oh, that was probably a nice breath of fresh air.
Yeah. So, okay, then we get to rationalism. This is a theory or method based on the thesis that human reason can in principle be the source of all knowledge. In the modern period, rationalism was initially championed by René Descartes and spread during the 17th and 18th centuries, primary in continental Europe. This is opposed with empiricism. So, let's see.
Yeah, I like Descartes. I have one of his books.
You love Descartes. What do you have, the Cogito or Meditations?
I don't even know. I have to dig this thing up. I read it a while ago. It was pretty interesting.
Okay, so now we get to reductionism, another one of your favorites. A number of related and contentious theories that hold very roughly that the nature of complex things can always be reduced to or explained by a simpler or more fundamental things. So this is a set of objects, phenomena, explanations, theories, and meanings. In short, it is philosophical materialism taken to its logical consequences. So, again, if you like materialism, you love
You're gonna love
reductionism. Relativism is the view, the meaning and value of human beliefs and behaviors have no absolute reference. Relativists claim that humans understand and evaluate beliefs and behaviors only in terms, for example, their historical and cultural context. Philosophers identify that many different kinds of relativism, depending on what allegedly depends on something and what something depends on. So I'm sure you've heard the term like that's just relative or it's just relative to you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And it's like you only have a reference point for what you know is basically what that's saying.
Right.
And it's only relative to your own life and perceptions. Okay, another one of your favorite. We're just hitting all of the greatest hits here for you now.
Yeah, baby.
We get to scientism. This is the belief that science has primacy over other ways of obtaining knowledge. This term is often used in a derogatory manner to refer to a level of trust or reliance upon scientific progress that the speaker deems excessive. So, I don't even like... in a way that just even that like who wrote that, a scientist, that explanation, because it's already saying like, oh, they're all against us, kind of, when that's not it. When I say scientism, it's usually somebody that's like super dogmatic within science, like Richard Dawkins. Like nobody really likes him that much, like other scientists. He's like one of the most, maybe evolutionary biologists kind of revere him, but like outside of that, he's kind of, people don't like him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is I don't like the overreaching or dogmatic thinking in any regard. Whether, again, I just said how I feel about like people that take the Bible word for word. Well, I feel the same way that like want to read scientific, papers or use scientific method to only obtain knowledge or truth. Like, what are you doing? That just sounds terrible. But
yeah,
that's my opinion.
Desired.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's even within science, you have the humanities, like archaeology, philosophies, even a humanity, things that are not as empirical as like biology,
Uh-huh.
So, you have you have different tiers of things, and where I'm far more likely to get down or get behind somebody that has, a hard science background than I am somebody that's, just the humanities. I'm not against them. If you're going to give me some sort of data, I think you want to get it from the hard sciences in terms, and you can't really get that from certain, like psychology. Like, we don't know what consciousness is. We don't exactly know how, the brain works and how people why they have anxiety. And science is really good at answering how questions, but it's not good at answering why questions, if that makes sense.
It does. And hopefully they will start to be able to answer some of the why questions.
And look, I love science. We talk about science all the time on the show, but I'm also hard on it too, because I don't think that...
Well, you have to be. You can't just accept things.
These scientists go crazy, like some of them, you give them a little bit and they're off running, and, their new book or this or that. And it's like, come on, like there's still people that are defending their theories from 30, 40 years ago. It's like, you have to know.
You gotta let it go, bro.
You have to keep moving. You have to keep this thing moving. Like, my favorite scientists are the visionary ones that are trying to think ahead, using metaphysical thinking or metaphysics, using knowledge that's already out there, taking a more of a bigger picture view of things. Because I think that if you just look at things, like, if it's so broken down that you're only doing scientific method on this one aspect of this one part of science and this one specific thing, and then you want to have a ton of views on other things, that's fine. But if you want to have a ton of other views on other things that having to do with other branches of science that you're not even educated in, and you think you have like authority over other people, like, come on, get out of here with that. That's nonsense. So, and that happens all the time, especially online.
Well, online is...
No, I mean, but how is science being communicated if it's not through online?
That's true. Yeah, especially in today. Yeah.
Solipsism. This is the view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. So this is the idea that you're the only thing or I'm the only thing that's real. I'm the only thing that I know, that I'm the only thing that can be real or is real. I can't verify anything else. It's kind of what that comes down to.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of had that thought run past us at one point.
Yeah. Stoicism is the Hellenistic school with the principle that self-control, both emotional and physical, leads to an inner strength and character that enables one to harmoniously interact with the natural world. It is often contrasted with Epicureanism. So Stoicism, there's some good aspects to it. I like it. Most modern philosophers, or I should say a lot of modern philosophers, are Stoics, or they practice Stoicism. There's some things I don't like about it too, but the idea of like taking self-ownership and control over things, both emotional, physical, like, that's true. You can't let other people, rattle you. You have to take care of yourself. Even if you can't blame everybody for everything else too, you have to take some sort of ownership of yourself. And I think that there is a line. Obviously, you can't control everything, but I think that if you look at it that way, like, instead of saying, Maurice, you said this to me, it hurt my feelings, and it wasn't that big of a deal. It's like, okay, that's not that big of a deal. I can deal with that, so
right.
It is what it is. But I think that there's some good aspects to it. Teleologism is the supposition that there is design, purpose, directive principle, or finality in the works and processes of nature, and the philosophical study of that purpose. Teleology stands in contrast to philosophical naturalism, and both ask the questions separate from the questions of science. While science investigates natural laws and phenomena, philosophical naturalism and teleology investigate the existence or non-existence of an organizing principle behind those natural laws and phenomena. Philosophical naturalism asserts that there are no such principles, while teleology asserts that there are. We talk about teleology all the time. I bring it up all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a purpose? I definitely think there's subjective purpose, kind of like a hero's journey in a way, kind of connected to that. Like, we all have some sort of story that, or I don't even know if it's like, I would say like fate, but we all have this like thing, these obstacles to overcome, you know, and I really do believe that there's this like archetype thing happening. Now, is there some object or external, you know, purpose or telos? I don't know. I mean, how do you think of, like, what did you think about that coming in? And what do you think about that now? Like, again, I think I might have asked you this earlier, but
I think everybody has some kind of problem in their life that they have to overcome.
Right, but specifically purpose.
I think that
do you create your own purpose? Is there some inherent purpose, you know, interwoven to your reality? You know, what do you think's going on?
I think that you have to find. Yeah, I think you do. I think you do create your own purpose, but that's part of what's meant to be done is to figure out. That's like the test. Again, I'm a little religious and stuff, so I think that the creator is testing you. And you may have it may manifest in different ways. You know what I mean? Like I have pretty bad anxiety and stuff, and I have to overcome that to be able to move to the next level or to be able to fully enjoy my life. Some people rise to the occasion and some people don't, but I think we all have some kind of issues that we have to deal with. I'm not talking about like, you know, stuff that just happens in life. People pass away, this and that, you know, you break up with relationships and stuff. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's an internal thing that everybody has to kind of accomplish in their life, and it's messed up in today's society. If you're looking on social media and stuff, it looks like everybody's life's all perfect, but then when you talk to people, you kind of can see that they all have some kind of inner battle. You can call them demons or whatever.
I mean, my wife and I talk about this all the time. Like, who posts like normal shit or like their person, like if something personal is going on and it's not good, like who's posting shit? Like I don't ever see any.
True. You never
and
see
when
that
you do see it, you're like, whoa, what's going on with that person?
Yeah.
You know, like so.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a little too much information.
But so I think that with social media, you have to take it for, you have to understand that that's the best representation of that person, or that's what the version of that person wants you to see, you know? So you just have to understand that. And then once you understand that, you know, use, you know, social media as a tool or a way to like, you know, unwind. But yeah, I mean, people definitely have taken it to the next level for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see here. This one wasn't going to be on there, but I thought we should throw it in there because we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. But uniformitarianism, also known as the doctrine of uniformity or the uniformitarianism principle, is the assumption that the same natural laws and process that operate in our present-day scientific observations have always operated in the universe in the past and apply everywhere in the same universe. So this is the idea that the past has acted the exact same way as the future, and we can figure things out based on that. So I think John Anthony West and Graham Hancock have brought this up, you know, in terms of like these cycles when you talk about like golden ages and yuga cycles and different things. So this kind of, I think, plays more into like when you're talking about like geology and like the way things kind of play out with that and all that kind of stuff. But I think it does apply to a lot of different stuff. But if you look at it like everything's always progressing, or it's like there's this causal line and nothing ever breaks off, or there's not, you know, dips or upticks or anything like that. I think that, I don't know if I believe that. I believe that there are different flows and different, you know, even in the ancient world, if you look at some of the stuff from Mycenae and like early Greece and the Minoan stuff, and then you look at the buildings that were being built by like the Egyptians, and it's like night and day, you know, and that's the same time period. So it's like that can even go across. Look at like Göbekli Tepe. We have Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years ago, and we don't have much until we get to what, Sumerian, you know, Akkadian stuff, 3,000, 4,000 BC, you know, and then you get to the Egyptian stuff. So it's like, I don't know if I believe that there is this straight causal line or line of whatever processes that have gotten us to this place. It's almost like it's almost like the determinism of ideas in a way, or like scientific principles, or like first principles, something like that. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm an idiot.
Getting into a trance, folks.
I am now turning into the oracle. Let's see here. I think we already discussed that. Okay, space and time. Objects appear to us in space and time, while abstract entities such as classes, properties, and relations do not. How do space and time serve this function as ground for objects? Are space and time entities themselves of some form? Must they exist prior to objects? How exactly can they be defined? How is time related to change? Must there always be something changing in order for time to exist? So I think that these are all interesting questions. I'm going to have to ponder some of that stuff more, but I don't know how to think about time. I think time could be almost like free will and determinism in my head, the way I think about it, because it's like, we've talked about the psychedelic experience. We've talked about meditation, slowing down time, or being in like one of those reactionary, like if you're like swerving in a car or something, you like everything stands still for a second, like what's happening there? Because in your mind, time is slowing down or stopping, but externally it's not. So if we have the ability to manipulate time within ourselves, how is time constant externally? I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Maybe I'm not smart enough to understand, but
I don't know if anyone is.
So like to me, then you have the atomic clock experiment and how, more gravity equals time slowing down. So, I mean, there's a lot of like weird things happening there. Let's see here. Causality. Classical philosophy recognized a number of causes, including theological future causes, and special relativity. In quantum field theory, the notions of space and time and causality become entangled together, with temporal orders of causations becoming dependent on who is observing them. The laws of physics are symmetrical in time, so could equally be used to describe time as running backwards. Why then do we perceive it as flowing in one direction, the arrow of time, and as containing causation flowing in the same direction? So again, what's like the first cause? Was there a first cause? You were talking about the Big Bang earlier. Like what caused the Big Bang? Was there this pinhead size of energy that, and then after the Big Bang, things became, more disordered, or there was, went from high entropy to low entropy, and it's just going to keep disintegrating, which it's weird. Who was it? I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the Cosmic Hologram, I think, is her book. I'm drawing a blank. Anyways, her theory is that entropy is actually tied to information. Like maybe there's obviously entropy when it comes to like energy, but like when it comes to information, maybe that's a whole separate thing, and then things are becoming more ordered. So like when physicists talk about entropy, things are becoming more disordered, which doesn't make sense when you think about it, because we're becoming more ordered here, right? Like on this planet, and like you think that but it's actually things are becoming more disorganized. And her theory was that it's the opposite. So like information started off as like not organized at all, and over time it becomes super organized, and now we have all these information systems and technology and all this great and wonderful stuff. So see if you can find that episode, because I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on her name right now.
The Cosmic Hologram?
Yeah. Let's see if I can find it before you.
Yeah, I'm sure you can, man. That wasn't Jude Caravan, was it?
Well, Jude Caravan. And she's interesting. She has PhD in physics, I think from like Oxford or something, and she also had a degree in archaeology, because we were talking about some of that stuff with her too. So again, that's pretty interesting stuff. And then you get metaphysical cosmology and cosmogony. Cosmogony deals with specifically the origin of the universe. Modern metaphysical cosmology and cosmogony try to address questions such as, what is the origin of the universe? What was its first cause? Is its existence necessary? Things like that. And then, again, I mentioned atomism. We discussed monism. So now this is where we're going to get to where some people might not know what some of these things are, and there's a very distinct differences. So there's pantheism, which is the belief that everything composes of all-encompassing immanent God. So like pantheism is the idea that everything is identical with divinity, or everything is God. Pantheists do not believe in a personal or anthropomorphic God, but they believe in they believe that interpretations of the term differ as well. So it's kind of messy there, but yeah. So pantheism is the idea that everything is God or divine, all matter.
Yeah.
And then there's this other Greek variation called Panon Theism, which pan means everything or all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the belief that posits that the divine, be it a monotheistic God or polytheistic gods, or an external cosmic force or whatever it is basically, it's basically the idea that I don't know how to explain this. I'm trying to think of a way. This is hard to explain the difference between these two. One of them, I think, is outside. Like, I think panentheism is the idea that God is outside of, like, we're all part of this thing, but it's still like above us, kind of a thing. So that would be the difference there. And I think pandeism is the belief that, same thing. It comes from the Greek word pan, and then deus or deus, which is a Latin term meaning God. So is a term describing beliefs coherently incorporating or mixing logically reconcilable elements of pantheism, that God or a metaphysically equivalent creator deity is identical to nature. Classical deism is that the creator God who designed the universe no longer exists in a status where it can be reached, and it can instead be confirmed only by reason. It is therefore most particularly that the belief that the creator of the universe actually became the universe, and then ceased to exist as a separate entity.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think here. Oh, okay. So then we get to panpsychism. So panpsychism, we've talked about this a lot, especially with some of our psychedelic guests. This actually seems to be kind of a popular theory, which is the view that all things have a mind or mind-like quality. And the word was coined by an Italian philosopher, Francesco Patrizzi, in the 16th century, and then it derives from two Greek words, pan meaning all, and psyche meaning soul or mind. Again, this is the idea that all matter has some level of consciousness. And you could even go back to like what we were talking about in past episodes, like Aristotle had his hierarchy of consciousness. So you have think of like a bubble, a big bubble with two smaller bubbles in it. Okay, the smallest bubble would be plant consciousness, okay? And plant consciousness stands on its own, okay? Then you have animal consciousness, which incorporates both plant consciousness and the animal consciousness. And then you get to human consciousness, which incorporates all three levels of that consciousness. So I would assume, yeah, I don't know. I like that though. I don't know what you think.
I like that too. I think that's kind of my roommate had a book about with Rudolf Steiner, and there was some stuff in there that was kind of similar to that.
So I know that was kind of
I'm down on it.
lots of reading tonight, but I did want to get all those terms out there because, like I said, we've discussed some of these things at different points, but I think, I've gotten emails like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Kind of a thing. So
I mean, it's crazy that we've went over all those different things throughout our time.
yeah, I mean, at some point or another.
That's some in-depth stuff, and like you've said it a couple of different times. It's hard for my brain to wrap around this, and I have the same feeling. It's weird to think outside of you to that degree,
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I still don't think I got that Panon-Theism right. I think I got that one wrong. I can't even say it. I can't even talk tonight. I don't know what's going on with me, but I'll be better for the next one, folks.
Well, we've had a week off, bro. It
wasn't a week off, was it? Oh yeah, maybe it was a full week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna try and do this. Last couple nights, I had like an intense migraine the other night. That was like I had a hangover the next day. That's how bad it was. But yeah, part 4 will be on megalithic structures. I have all the slides ready to go. I have a lot of comparisons between cultures too, between not just megalithic sites, but also like statues and figurines and symbolism and things like that. So it should be a fun episode.
Beautiful.
Less talking, less reading.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to look. I just, like I said, I wanted to get all that stuff out there because we've talked about like metaphysics in terms of just you and I, or us and a guest, just like shooting the shit on it, But I wanted to get all the actual terminology out there and things that we've discussed on the show. I mean, what it comes down to, where I stand on things, I think that we create our reality. Not that it's separate from other people's reality. Like, we still live in this objective world. But I think that when it comes down to like free will and like purpose and stuff, I think we're the creators of that.
Yeah.
And if there's something that exists outside of that, I think by living out your own purpose or living out your own hero's journey or whatever it may be, you might come to some universal or eternal sort of like wisdom or truth, if that makes sense.
It does.
So that's kind of where I stand on it. What's going on
I
there?
can't even swallow.
Jesus.
We're having all kinds of physical and mental deformities today.
Yeah, I don't know why, man. I just couldn't read tonight. And these are my own like notes. These are things like notes that I've written off like the internet and stuff. But like I said, it's not normal that we even do that. So
yeah, no, you're usually again, you're gonna read some stuff. You're gonna make some mistakes. We are all human. So
no, I'm not worried about that. I just, like I said, I just feel like I couldn't talk tonight. Something was a little off.
Yeah, we
had a bad show. What are you gonna do?
I wouldn't even say that. There's lots of information being passed around, and I just was listening and trying to grasp half of them. It's tough. It's tough stuff.
Yeah. Well, I love you, Maurice. You're a good dude.
Love you too, my man.
So yeah, so we're gonna try and get this other episode in this weekend. I don't know when. Hopefully, maybe tomorrow or the next day. We'll do again megalithic structures. Part 4, tomorrow at 1 p.m.
Something concrete we can really sink our teeth into.
Yeah. Oh, and Maurice will be falling back on those old tropes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Those in the middles, Was the Sphinx older? Is it not older? I don't know. The answer's in the middle,
Yeah, see that you can't use it for that,
Yeah.
Like is 2 + 2 it's 4 or is it 6? Well, it's somewhere in the middle. It just doesn't make any sense, man.
in the
why
middle
with
thing,
math,
you know what? Okay, so for your peace of mind, the in the middle thing works for perception.
Yeah, that's what, because your memory. What I usually equate it more towards the memory, but at the same time,
I mean,
there's
even like
been a lot of
Aristotle used to
things-
say that like life is gray, like it's gray area, like life's like there's truth is in the middle. Like there is something that, but I think a lot of that has to do with our senses and perception. When you start talking about like logic and reason and mathematics and stuff, there is no in the middle. It's cut and dry.
Yeah, yeah. But like I know a lot of people that are into some crazy theories, and it's like, okay, well, I wouldn't go that far with it, but there is some truth to it, so maybe
Yeah.
it's in the middle somewhere. Again,
Just listen to what I'm saying. You could apply it when it has to do with perception, or you're
Don't
talking.
worry about when I apply
No,
it.
I'll
bro. I'll apply it whenever I feel like it.
All
All
right.
right.
I'm,
You
well,
can't tell me that.
all right. All right, folks. Well, we will be back soon. And tomorrow at 1 p.m. on our Discord channel, we are doing a fan chat if you're interested. And
Come on in and say hello.
And yeah, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/MindEscapePodcast for just $2 a month. You'll get exclusive guest episodes and segments. I just uploaded some stuff on there. We have an extra discussion with Angel Millar, where I don't know, we were talking about a lot of different esoteric stuff, which that was a fun conversation. And we have a lot of stuff up there. I mean, if you're not a $2 member on our Patreon, you listen to our show a lot, just do it. It's basically a whole nother show. It's $2 a month. If you listen to us already, you get basically like a whole nother show. There's a big catalog there. So, I mean, there's not 190 episodes, but there's a lot. So,
Yeah, we've been cranking them out lately, so.
yeah. And there's a lot of good
Bumping
ones
it
too.
up.
Some of our best guests, we have Patreon episodes. So let's see here. Also, one more time, head on over to indrasweb.org. It is live. This is a platform we created to discuss these kinds of topics: nature of reality, weird things, metaphysical things. If you have a hypothesis or theory, or you just want to speculate,
Lay
come
it
say
on us.
hello. Yeah, check it out. And that's it. Everybody be safe. We love you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.